Once again, it is Monday, so we are live and in living color following another episode of Monday Night Raw. Joining us here on the J Area Wrestling Show. I'm hoping that your guys' weekend has been well. Hopefully, the week ahead will just be even better. We are fresh off of a Halloween weekend as well as a Saturday night's main event that had a couple of title changes. Of course, I want to jump into the Monday Night Raw discussion and to discuss what had transpired. But of course, Saturday night's main event, it was a noteworthy show. And I would be remiss to not talk about what had happened. Finally, the WWE seemingly has pulled the trigger on a CM Punk world title reign. We saw a hint of this at SummerSlam when he defeated the ring general Gunther for said world championship, although it only lasted about 5 minutes. That gave us a quick glimpse as to what a world championship title reign would look like for CM Punk. Ultimately, though, that would be for naught, as Seth Rollins, who was the Money in the Bank holder at the time, would cash in said briefcase and earn himself a championship match and then defeat CM Punk for that world title. We're coming up nearly 2 years to the day since CM Punk had made his long-awaited return to the WWE. And in those 2 years, we have seen him embark on rivalries against the likes of Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, just to name a few. And the one question that kept coming up was whether or not we were going to see CM Punk win another world championship. That would transpire here at Saturday night's main event as he would get the victory over Jey Uso, a clean-cut victory over main event Jey Uso, finally capitalizing on all the cachet that they have built up on this CM Punk return. He now is the reigning and defending World Heavyweight Champion once again, and I gotta tell you, it's a little bit nostalgic for a guy like me who grew up watching CM Punk in the early days of that ECW rebrand, seeing him go to Monday Night Raw, winning the World Championship, and of course, that legendary heel run with the world title as he feuded with Jeff Hardy in '09. So to see him again with that world championship, it does a lot for me as a kid growing up, being a big fan of the Second City Saint. We asked ourselves, what would this look like with CM Punk as the world champion in 2025, certainly in the WWE? So many possibilities, and he addressed that in his opening promo on Monday Night Raw, whether or not he's going to face a guy like John Cena, like Dominic Mysterio, like AJ Styles. So many names, so many possibilities for a guy like Punk to really sink his teeth into as he embarks on this new championship reign. Now, unfortunately for CM Punk, he is not done by any means with the vision. Guys like Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, and of course Paul Heyman, who has a very deep history with CM Punk, would like to be one of the individuals to get rid of that world championship off of the shoulder of one Phil Brooks. I look at this as a long-term story. I don't know necessarily how long CM Punk will hold this world championship, but the Vision's reign at the top is just continuing to build. They had a guy like Seth Rollins at the top as the world champion. He's gone. Now they're looking to display Braun Breaker as this next guy, potentially being the one to unseat CM Punk. And now we're seeing the build to Survivor Series. I think it's pretty obvious. It's War Games, right? With the conclusion of Monday Night Raw, we saw that Jay and CM Punk are seemingly on the same page. They were up against the Brawns. And then Logan Paul comes out. And for a split second there, for a split, minute second, I literally thought that Logan Paul was turning babyface. And I realized, you know what? It's Logan Paul. He has to be a heel. So what does he do? He gets the brass knuckles and he lays out the world champion CM Punk, seemingly aligning himself with the Vision for the time being. I don't necessarily know if he's a member of the group, but it's seemingly apparent that he has an alliance with them against CM Punk. If you ask me, that's already 3 of the spots filled for the heels on a War Games team. So who do we have on the baby faces here? I think if you ask me right now, which we seemingly are, it's got to be Punk and Jay. I'm thinking LA Knight. I'm thinking Jimmy Uso because he's Jay's brother, right? And that 5th spot could very well go to Roman Reigns. That will add a level of intrigue, add a level of depth to the story that is the War Games matchup, and it would add a lot of drama given the players involved. Roman, Punk, and also Paul Heyman back in the center of it all, since we saw them at last year's War Games, but on the same team. Now they'll be going up against one another. So, very intrigued, very interested to see, but that wasn't the only noteworthy item to come out of Saturday night's main event, as Dominic Mysterio retains his championship, defeating Penta and Rusev in a triple threat match. And on Monday Night Raw, we see the return of Rey Mysterio confronting his son, Dominic Mysterio, as Dominic continues to claim the notion that he is the king of the luchadores, that he is the greatest luchador of all time. And a guy like Rey Mysterio has a lot of offense to take with that, as a lot of people consider him to be one of, if not the greatest luchador of all time. And upon naming some of the all-time greats, guys like El Santo, Blue Demon, and of course Eddie Guerrero, I mean, big pop for Eddie. I mean, no matter where you go, it's going to be a big pop. I gotta say, I love Dominic Mysterio. This is my guy. Because the moment Ray brings up El Santo and Blue Demon, and you see the reaction of Dominic Mysterio, and then he brings up Eddie Guerrero, and Dominic just on cue says, "Keep my father's name out your mouth." And it's like, that's fantastic. Fantastic. That's why I'm a big fan of Dominic Mysterio. He and Rey Mysterio, I never get tired of this feud. This is something that's been building up since 2022, back at Clash of the Castle, when Dominic first betrayed Rey Mysterio and Edge during that event. And we are now approaching over 3 years after the fact. And every time I see these guys together in the ring, whether it is in a matchup, whether it is an interview segment, or just passing by, it is always entertaining. It's story upon stories, and it just demonstrates, one, why Rey Mysterio is one of the all-time greats. But then you look at his son, it's like, this guy has all the potential in the world. I am very confident that he's going to be able to parlay this run into a world championship opportunity. Don't know if he's going to win it just yet, but he's already the Mega AAA champion as well as the Intercontinental champion. Who's to say down the line, maybe in the next year, he gets a championship opportunity for that World Heavyweight Championship? I think it's very much a possibility. Big fan of Dominic, big fan of Rey Mysterio, and also I do have to point out, it is very clear that they are teasing Rey Mysterio versus Dominic Mysterio in that retirement match for Rey. I've always said I feel like it's going to be mask versus hair, maybe career versus title, something along those lines. But the way that Rey Mysterio kept using the phrase, "As long as I'm around, you'll never be the greatest luchador of all time. As long as I'm around, this is not your ring. And as long as I'm around, you will never be the greatest Mysterio of all time." That type of verbiage isn't just there for any reason. They are planting the seeds for Rey's retirement matchup, and it has to be against Dominic. It would not be appropriate if it was anybody else. At WrestleMania, the biggest show of the year, Rey has 2 victories over Dominic Mysterio. One at WrestleMania 39 and one at WrestleMania 40 during a tag team match. Dominic has yet to earn a big-time victory on a big-time PLE against Rey Mysterio. This is how they're going to do it. It very well could happen at WrestleMania 42. Will it? We'll have to wait and see. But the seeds have been planted, I should say. And I'm all for it. I think if you're the ultimate opportunity here, whenever you have a star with the name value, with the equity of a Rey Mysterio, you want to be able to take that and push on to the next generation, push on to the next guy coming up. What a better name than Dominic to garner him all that heat by retiring one of the GOATs. That's how you do it. And I know that Rey and Dominic, they honor the tradition of pro wrestling. So it would make all the sense for Dominic to be the individual to, one, retire his father, but also the possibility of unmasking his father for good. I mean, we've seen the pictures of Rey out in public without the mask. He only wears it for show at this point, so you might as well just, lose the mask and end the career just like that. But super interested and super excited to see the next chapter of Dominic versus Rey Mysterio, presumably in a mask versus career or mask versus hair matchup between the two. Shout out to Will the Savage says, "Hi Jose, how are you doing today? And happy Halloween." Shout out to Will, happy belated Halloween to you as well, my friend. If you weren't there for our Halloween stream, I highly urge you to go back and check that out. It is available in the archives. I share some of my favorite, spooky wrestling gimmicks as well as scary movies. I share a couple of ghost stories that I've actually experienced in my life. So if you haven't checked out the Halloween episode of our live streams, please go out of your way and check that out, or check out some of the clips that we have been posting throughout the week. Always remember that you can't be a part of the live streams if you're not subscribed. In order to stay a part of the chat, you got to be subscribed to the channel. Of course, if you enjoy the content that we produce here on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and again, subscribe to make sure the channel continues to grow in the trajectory that it has been over the course of these last few months. It would not be possible without any of you guys. Shout out to Reese in the chat. I see you, my friend. How are you doing, Reese? Glad to see you again here for another edition of the JRE Wrestling Show following an episode of Monday Night Raw. And we're really trying to ride this wave of momentum. And speaking of riding the wave of momentum, or the lack of momentum, I recently saw on the internet, of course, on Twitter, a lot of the wrestling discourse about Triple H and his booking styles. There have been a lot of complaints about Triple H and his inability to push strong heels. One of those most recent cases has been Drew McIntyre. Obviously, he just lost the WWE Championship matchup at Saturday Night's Main Event against the reigning and defending champion, Cody Rhodes. But he's not the only individual that Triple H has seemingly fumbled in terms of being a strong heel. We've seen other acts like Chad Gable, like The New Day, and even most notoriously, the John Cena heel turn. Does the WWE have a heel problem? They are loaded with babyface stars, guys like Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, LA Knight, Jey Uso, Sami Zayn. They have baby faces everywhere and everywhere. But for credible baby faces, they need to have a credible heel. And I really feel like the WWE is lacking in that department. We have solid guys like a Drew McIntyre, as I mentioned. But you can only go so far with these guys and have them continuing to lose. Otherwise, they are not a credible threat to our baby faces in the promotion. I think one of the biggest fumbles was the John Cena heel turn. The moment itself, the moment at Elimination Chamber where John Cena turns heel, is an all-timer. It is a moment that will be remembered forever. It went viral for a reason. You saw so many people have these viral reactions to the moment for a good reason. We never thought that John Cena was going to turn heel. And upon that heel turn, we were awaiting this new attitude of John Cena. But to me, it just missed the mark. There was a lot of opportunities here to have John Cena become a dastardly heel, unlike no one else. But upon the falling out between The Rock, Travis Scott, and the WWE creative, it really threw a wrench into the plans, seemingly, for that WrestleMania matchup between John Cena and Cody Rhodes, to the point where they completely ixnay the whole thing. John Cena goes on a heel run, and it had its moments. He had solid matches against Randy Orton and CM Punk. The pipe bomb that he dropped on CM Punk as well, very good. But then you get to the SummerSlam matchup, and they completely just kibosh it the week before SummerSlam. And it's like he basically gave up being a heel. And it was never really a good idea if you think about it. Now, in theory, yes, to turn him heel is monumental. It'll certainly do numbers. Everyone's going to remember it. It's going to go viral. It's going to be a big deal. But John Cena's retirement tour, we want to be able to show our appreciation. We want to be able to display our emotion and our gratitude towards a guy like John Cena. So maybe the execution just wasn't it. As for a guy like Drew McIntyre, I don't really know what else you can say about Drew McIntyre. He was the MVP of 2024. He has seemingly carried the WWE on his back over the last few years in terms of storytelling. Look at his feud with, CM Punk for the biggest example. And we've seen him time and time again get championship opportunities and just get squandered. You had multiple opportunities to pull the trigger on a Drew McIntyre title win. I think you very well could have done that at Saturday Night's Main Event and potentially have Cody regain it in the not too far future. But they don't do it. And now it's like, well, where do we go with Drew McIntyre? Because prior to this, he was still building up momentum. trying to re-climb up the ranks of the main event scene. He finally gets there, has a match against, Cody Rhodes, and loses at WrestlePalooza and loses at Saturday Night's main event. So now where do we go with him? Seemingly with Jacob Fatu. But it's just, how can we build up these heels to be credible threats if they never end up winning? The New Day won the tag team titles at WrestleMania, but again, it's like to no effect. Their title reign was forgettable. Chad Gable, again, another example. Didn't win the Intercontinental Championship, even though that made the perfect sense last summer. Why not? And on top of that, we never really got a proper blow off between him and Otis. That's still something I didn't think we get a full, resolve out of that. I don't know. Sir Robert in the chat, Ray will turn heel and manage Dom. You know Ray can't turn heel. When are they ever going to turn him heel? Come on. Wilson, I unfortunately haven't because as of late I've been always sleepy, but I am not sleeping tonight. Well, shout out to you, Will. I appreciate you staying up here and hanging out with us on the stream. Just know that they're always available in the archives. If you want to go back and check them out in their entirety, they will always be up there. So I appreciate you dedicating your time to hang out with us here talking pro wrestling. Reese says Gunther is a good heel when he comes back. Gunther is a traditional heel. I mean, this guy, all the intangibles, all the in-ring talent, the mic work. I mean, Gunther is a heel's heel. Can't wait for him to come back. Speaking of Gunther, it was announced at Saturday Night's main event that we were going to have a tournament to decide who will be the final opponent for John Cena at the December 13th edition of Saturday Night's main event. It was announced that there was going to be participants coming from Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and even places that may be outside of the WWE, potentially maybe AAA, TNA, something like that, I would imagine. And I got to share who I think would be the best options to face John Cena in his final match in the WWE. I have 5 names that immediately come to mind that I think would be stellar names, stellar choices, not only because of the in-ring work, but also because what it could do for their careers. I'm a big advocate that whoever goes out in terms of retiring, they should put over that next generation, that next superstar, as a way to transfer all the heat, whether it's good or bad, to that superstar and allow him or her to be another star in their place. Honorable mention, I gotta go with Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry has been a huge star in TNA and a crossover with NXT. He has made it very publicly known that he would love to have a matchup against John Cena just because of the story that it would tell between them. Everyone knows about Joe Hendry being a big fan of John Cena and how he was one of those proponents that inspired Joe Hendry to go into pro wrestling. But now that John Cena is on his way out, what a better way to send out to have him take on against Joe Hendry and potentially put him over again as the next big star. That's something I would love to see, but because he is a TNA superstar at the moment, I don't think they're going to go ahead and have him win that opportunity to face off against John Cena. It's probably going to be someone more in-house in the WWE. And number 5, I have Dominic Mysterio. I think Dominic would be a great choice here. 1, because he's a heel. 2, because it's a Mysterio and there's a little bit of respect there between Ray and John, and to have Dominic thrown into the mix, it allows him to add another notch to his belt as the greatest luchador of all time. But will they necessarily do that with Dominic? I don't think so. He currently is embroiled in seemingly a feud with Rey Mysterio again. But also there is a rumor at the point of this recording that he being Dominic, will be facing off against John Cena at the Survivor Series event. Now, whether or not that is true, we'll have to wait until the end of the month in November here to see who Dominic will be taking on in San Diego, California. But I also think just because of the name value and the possibilities of this final matchup, it probably won't be a guy like Dominic Mysterio. But we know that there's going to be names from NXT coming into the tournament. And that's why at number 4, I have Oba Femi, the ruler of NXT and potentially the ruler of WWE. You want to make a name for yourself. You want to put yourself on the map. You go into this tournament, you dominate, and you get the victory over John Cena and send him into retirement. That is how you make a star. That is how you make a statement if you are Oba Femi. I think it would serve him wonders to be the guy to retire John Cena. I think from a standpoint of just storytelling, it goes a long way for Obafemi, but also just the physicality. Obafemi over the last couple of years in the WWE has been doing great work as the North American champion, as the NXT World Champion. He is a star in the making. If you do not have your eyes on Obafemi, you better check out your eyes right now, because he is going to be one of those stars in the near future. We talk about stars in the near future, and someone that came from NXT as well. For my number 3 pick to win this tournament and face off against John Cena has a very similar vibe in terms of John Cena, and I think Carmelo Hayes would be a great choice here as well. Carmelo Hayes, also a Boston guy, so there's a little bit of Massachusetts similarities there between the two. I think Carmelo Hayes, as he is now a babyface seemingly against The Miz, they've started their feud there. I think he would be a great choice here because it would benefit him greatly to be the guy. I think, if anything, you see the chain of command. The Undertaker had passed the torch essentially to John Cena during his debut. Having Cena do that for Carmelo Hayes, I think, would go a long way. I'm a big fan of Melo. I think he is a star in the making for the WWE, even though it's taken them a minute to recognize it. Carmelo Hayes going over against John Cena, that would solidify him, and it would put him in a great position within the company. At number 2, I have the visions of Braun Breaker. Again, see the previous answer that I had for Carmelo Hayes. All the reasons why it would be so great to have a guy like Braun Breaker go over is because he is the future. This guy will be a world champion within the next 10 months. I'm going on record here and say by next, October, September, I think we're going to see him as a world champion. Braun Breaker has all the tools, the look, the speed, the strength, the in-ring, the promos, the attitude. I'm a big fan of Braun Breaker. Having him decimate John Cena, I hope it's not a complete decimation just because it is John, and I don't want him to go out that way, but having Braun Breaker do that to a guy like John Cena, after having matches against guys like, Jey Uso, CM Punk, LA Knight, he's rubbed shoulders against some of the top guys. You do that against John Cena, dude, it's instantly known that this is an Impact player. Braun Breaker is my number 2 choice here to defeat John Cena in his retirement matchup at Saturday Night's Main Event in December. But at number 1, I think it's the very common choice, and I think it's the right choice. It has to be Gunther. Who else would it be? From a credible standpoint, from a believable standpoint, it has to be Gunther. You could tell this all-time great story. I look at it like Rocky IV, where you had Sylvester Stallone against, Ivan Drago, the foreign menace against the all-American babyface. It writes itself. Gunther should be the guy to defeat John Cena. They've never crossed paths, never had a match between the two, and this would be a great opportunity to do so. Gunther is a heel's heel. He does not care about being cheered. He doesn't care about being booed. He cares about being the very best, and if that means that he can defeat who many people consider to be the greatest of all time in his final matchup and solidifying himself as that threat, that would do greatness for Gunther. Gunther beating John Cena makes total sense, and as I've said before, sometimes the most obvious pick can be the correct pick. So at number 1, I have Gunther being the best option to be the man to retire John Cena. But let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments down below, who do you think should be the guy to defeat John Cena in his final matchup, or win that tournament, I should say. Let me know in the chat. Shout out to you guys in the chat here. I want to see what you guys are saying. Tyler, shout out to Tyler, says 8 weeks until Christmas. Where does the year go? Tyler says, I think Seth Rollins probably back at WrestleMania, but we're going to see what happens. I think as of right now, the timeline says he might be back in April. Now, whether or not that is time for WrestleMania, even if it's ready for WrestleMania, I don't think you should force it. I think, if anything, they'll save him for the Monday Night Raw following WrestleMania. I think. I wouldn't bet my money on a Seth Rollins being at WrestleMania. Robert says, it's going to be a swerve. Brock Lesnar will destroy everybody, and Cena beats Brock to end his career. I don't want to see it, to tell you the truth. I don't want to see it. I'm done with Brock against John Cena. That's been done already. If they were to do that, I would be legitimately upset. Sanford says, Jose, I want to know your opinion on the Dominic and Ray segment today since Ray is back. I'm a big fan of Rey Mysterio. You all know that. Got to meet the guy. He's one of the coolest celebrities I've ever met in my life. Him against Dominic, that rivalry between the two just never gets old for me. I love the dynamic between Ray and Dominic. They're not afraid to really get into it as a heel and babyface dynamic. Shoutouts to El Santo and Blue Demon, two of the greatest masked wrestlers of all time. And then once they bring up Eddie Guerrero and the camera shot, shout out to the cameraman who had that zoom when they mention Eddie. And then Dominic says the $1,000,000 line, keep my father's name out of your mouth. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Loved it. Love it. Every time I see Ray and Dominic in the ring together, whether it's in ring or whether it is a promo or an interview segment, always money. Always money. And I think we talked about this off stream. I think it's very clear that it's going to be Ray versus Dominic in Ray's final matchup. He's going to be the guy to retire Dominic, and I don't think he would have it any other way. Dominic for sure is the perfect choice to defeat Rey Mysterio, possibly unmasking him as well. If I'm Rey Mysterio, I would want it to be my son as a way to kind of pass on the baton to Dominic. Fantastic. Tyler agrees, Gunther versus John Cena. I think it's the right choice. Will the Savages, what if they did another WWE crossover for the new Spider-Man Spider-Verse and they put Rey Mysterio in it? I know that it might never happen, but it would be cool to have a crossover, something like Randy Savage. I think that would be pretty cool. And I think also when you look at a guy like Rey Mysterio who had ties with Spider-Man, I mean, one of his first gears, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe his debut in the WWE on that episode of SmackDown, I think he was wearing like a Spider-Man-esque type of mask. So there is a little bit of history there, maybe. And I mean, also, Spider-Man has a tie to wrestling in the comics. Of course, he was a masked wrestler for a while there. Obviously, the Randy Savage shout out, 2002, one of the best superhero films of all time. Is it likely? Probably not. However, never say never. And I think it'd be great. I'm big fan of Ray, big fan of Spider-Man. Tyler brings up AEW, asks, how are you feeling about AEW Blood and Guts announced 2 matches for the men and women? I'm all for it. I'm looking so forward to it. The Blood and Guts matchup is AEW's version of War Games, which coincidentally enough is going to be happening within weeks of each other, so I think it's pretty ironic. The women's Blood and Guts matchup will have Jamie Hayter, Queen Aminata, Willow Nightingale, Harley Cameron, Toni Storm, and Chris Statlander as they go up against the Triangle of Madness, Sky Blue, Julia Hart, Tekla, as well as Megan Bayne, Marina Shafir, and Mercedes Moné. Star-studded on both ends. AEW has one of the strongest women's division across the board in pro wrestling. Looking forward to it. I like how they've been building this up between the Triangle of Madness. Obviously, Jamie Hayter has her beef with them, so does Queen Aminata. We know that Mercedes Moné and Statlander have a beef there as well. Megan Bayne and Shafir have just created a tag team. So it's like so many of the ongoing storylines all getting mixed up into one. It reminds me of a lot of like Marvel Comics, where you had every star having their own line of storylines, and then somewhere along the lines, they just begin to intersect into one big issue of all these people coming together for like a mega event. I'm a big fan of it. I'm looking forward to the women's matchup, but of course there's also the men's that will have the Death Riders. John Moxley's Death Riders, where it's him, Pac, Wheeler Yuta, Claudio. They all will be going up against the babyface team of the conglomeration, which will have guys like Orange Cassidy. We have also Kyle O'Reilly, Briscoe, Roddy Strong, and Darby Allin. You already know, with Darby Allin in the matchup, you're going to get some kind of a wild stunt here, and I'm all for it. Big Darby Allin fan. I'm looking forward to it. It's just a matter of who is coming out on top, right? I think my prediction right now, I think the Death Riders are going to go over. They've lost enough. I think they're going to go over. I do think that as for the little women's War Games, women's Blood and Guts matchup, I'll go with the baby faces. I think Team Jamie Hayter wins, and then for the men, the Death Riders go over. Very rare do you see both babyface teams going over. But I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate the question there. Robert says, I can't imagine why you have more viewers than AEW. I mean, if I was starting to get AEW numbers, that's pretty good, truthfully. Byron Cutler in the chat says, 3 months away from the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble of PLE that I know will have surprises. Love the Royal Rumble. It's one of my favorite events of the whole year. One of my favorite matches as well for that very reason. Byron also goes on to say that plus every Royal Rumble has had surprises. It's really a matter of what. I still think a guy like Jericho will be in the Rumble. There have been rumblings of Chris Jericho making a return. I would not be surprised if he made his return in the Royal Rumble matchup, especially because this one's going to be in Saudi Arabia, so they're going to want to bring out a lot of these big names, big legends for the match. That's typically what they do when they have those overseas shows. But yeah, you can go ahead and bookmark this. I'm pretty confident. I always told you, if I'm a betting man, which I am, put your money on Chris Jericho being in the Royal Rumble matchup. Don't know for how long, but I certainly think that is a strong possibility that we see the return of Y2J or some version of Chris Jericho. I don't know if it's going to be the list of Jericho, but I think he'll be in the Royal Rumble matchup this upcoming January or February. I don't even know what day it is anymore. Will the Savage says, do you think that this would be a great crossover faction? Miles Morales, Roman Reigns, and Gwen Stacy and Tamina. I mean, you have a lot of strength. Between the four of them, that's a lot of strength. You're keeping it with family ties, obviously Roman Reigns and Tamina. Having them as members of the bloodline, that's pretty cool. Gwen Stacy and Miles Morales. I like the intrigue because it's something different. That's a lot of strength, though, I will say. Shout out to Muhammad, who's here in the chat. Says hello, happy Monday. Hope you're doing well, my friend. I'm glad that you're here with us as well, joining us on a Monday night. Doing well. Hopefully you're doing well as well, Muhammad. I appreciate you being here as always. A lot of discussion points here on today's stream, but another one that I wanted to briefly talk about is the United States Championship Open Challenge. The U.S. Title Open Challenge has been a success ever since we saw Sami Zayn bring it back when he fought up against John Cena. It really has done wonders for the title itself. It has elevated the championship and has become a great part of SmackDown. You know, we had guys like Sami Zayn doing it. Obviously, Ilya Dragunov is doing it now. And those guys were putting on bangers. I mean, Sami Zayn went like 7 weeks having great matches against the likes of John Cena, Carmelo Hayes, Javon Evans. Like, Sami Zayn could do no wrong during that moment. He had a great match against Ilya Dragunov that allowed Ilya to win the title. And since then, he has had matchups against Nathan Fraser, Aleister Black. Ilya Dragunov is legit. To see him come back from such an injury after a year plus away and kind of get like a mixed reaction from the crowd. They didn't really know how to react. Then he earns that respect from the crowd and gets over with them in one matchup against Sami Zayn and is now solidifying himself as one of the best wrestlers, not only in the promotion, but possibly in all of pro wrestling. We've known this for a while, but for the whole entire crowd and the audience to recognize that, that's a step in the right direction. The U.S. title open is a great opportunity to allow the champion to be a fighting champion, but also showcase the other talents that are on the roster. I hope they continue to do it. I hope they continue to do it at a high level because these matches have been able to steal the show on a consistent basis. The U.S. title for the longest didn't mean anything. Little to nothing. And now it seems like it's coming back to that workhorse title. The Intercontinental title scene has always been like that workhorse title, at least it was intended to be. But the U.S. title right now seems to be that workhorse title. And it seems to me that Ilya Dragunov probably going to have a matchup against Axiom in the near future. And I think Tommaso Ciampa as well, as he tried to throw his name in the hat there this upcoming, or this previous SmackDown, I should say. But I love it. Big fan of the U.S. Open. I hope they continue to do something like that. Will the Savage has a lot of high flying and strength that would come from Miles, Roman, Gwen, and Tamina. I think the weakest link would be Tamina. But if that's your weakest link, that's not bad at all. Where has Tamina been? And by the way, I have not seen her in years, now that I think about it. But still, if you took Tamina off that team, which you don't have to at all. But if you had just Miles, Gwen, and Roman, dude, that's a pretty OP team. Like, that team is looking pretty good. Speaking of OP and looking pretty good, I would be remiss to not talk about Saturday night's main event. The new WWE Women's Champion, Jade Cargill, gets the huge victory over Tiffany Stratton. Stratton has held the championship since January 3rd of 2025, held it all the way to November 1st of the very same year. Nearly a year. That's like 10 months as the champion. Big props to Tiffany Stratton. I did have issues with her title reign when it came to creative because I felt like we were becoming a little bit redundant with her feuds. We had her up against people like Nia Jax, Charlotte Flair, and to me, and Jada Cargill, of course, and to me, it's like we didn't get too creative when it came to her title reign. Maybe because the roster's a little bit thin at the moment, but even then, you could have had her face off against Chelsea Green, Michin. I don't know. I just feel like her title reign was lacking for the most part. It was her first championship reign. I feel like she can only go up from here. But to see that matchup against Jade, I was a fan of it. I think it protects Jade and it demonstrates that she is a killer in the ring, no remorse, with a new attitude. And it also protects Tiffany Stratton because she was with a bum knee. So it allowed Jade to target that knee and really hone in on the fact that she was not 100%. More likely, we're going to see a rematch between the two. And I'm hoping it's going to be the last match for the foreseeable future because I've seen that matchup ad nauseum already. But Tiffany now is going back to being the hunter rather than the hunted. And I'd like to see this aggressive side of Tiffany trying to regain that title back from Jade Cargill. On the flip side, Jade, now that she's the world champion, or the women's champion, I should say, that's going to give her a chance to really showcase her heelish tendencies. When she was in AEW as the TBS champion, she went on like a big winning streak. That was like 50 winning streaks before she ended up losing to Chris Statlander. I do think we can get back to this dominant force of Jade Cargill and potentially get to that eventual Bianca Belair versus Jade Cargill matchup. I think that's where we're ultimately going to go to. I don't know what's the timeline on Bianca Belair's injury, but I do think that's probably going to be the end game, is Bianca unseating Jade Cargill as that women's WWE champion. Will the Savages or remove Tamina and put Jada Parker and OTM? You can honestly just leave OTM. Leave them out of it. You know, if you put Jada Parker in there, okay, hear me out here. I like the aspect of Jada Parker because she's like the new blood. You know, she's the new kid on the block. She's trying to get her own superstardom there. Also, the name Parker is obviously connected to Spider-Man. I kind of like Jada Parker being in that group. I think it's pretty cool. Has a little bit of a flair to her, a little attitude. Her, Roman Reigns, Spider-Gwen, and Miles Morales, down. 100% down for that. You're speaking my language, by the way. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time. So knowing that you guys are bringing him up, hey, between Spider-Man and wrestling, you're talking my language. I also want to do a quick shout out here to AJ Styles. Because watching AJ Styles' matchup here, he teamed up with Dragon Lee as they defended the world tag titles against the Judgment Day. AJ Styles is one of the greatest to ever do it, man. Like, I was always a fan of AJ, but something about today, it just clicked. I was like, wow. Like, we really got to watch AJ Styles over the course of these last 20 years. We have to enjoy while we can, being that he already announced he's going to be retiring next year in 2026. Him having a title reign with Dragon Lee does wonders for both of them. Keeps them in the mix, as well as help Dragon Lee kind of rise his stocks a little bit. So, but just the stories that AJ Styles has been a part of. You know, his rivalry with Kurt Angle, his stuff with Samoa Joe and Chris Daniels, anything in TNA, the Lone Wolf in TNA, the Bullet Club days, the rivalry with John Cena. Like, this guy is one of the most complete wrestlers of any generation. I personally am so fortunate to say that I've seen guys like AJ Styles, like Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, Samoa Joe. Those group of guys that's my cup of tea. I can get down with some of the brawlers, some of the big guys, the technicians, but if you really cut it down to a certain type, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, like that core group that came out of Ring of Honor and TNA, that's where my money's at. Welcome back, Rey Mysterio. Yeah, Rey Mysterio had a big return. I mean, that certainly got me going. I was not expecting Rey to come back, but now that we know that Survivor Series around the corner will be taking place in San Diego, California, maybe we'll get another return here, another appearance by Rey Mysterio there. Don't know what their plans are for Dominic. I feel like you have to have Dominic on that show. You cannot go to San Diego and not have a Mysterio on there. I think that would be criminal. Plus, he's an Intercontinental Champion. I think the move would be him against John Cena. I would love to see John Cena get in the ring with Dominic. Give him a little bit of the rub. Whether or not Cena wins, I mean, plus the story's already there. Dominic is the new kid on the block. He's trying to establish his name. Against John Cena, no less, huge. Then you add the wrinkle of the Intercontinental Championship, a title that Dom has held since WrestleMania 41, a title that John Cena has never won. He has won every single major title to win. The WWE title, the World title, the Tag title, the US title. Every title that has meant something. Royal Rumble, Money in the Bank. Never won the Intercontinental Champion. It is the one title that has eluded him and has prevented him from being a Grand Slam champion. So you now have this opportunity to do one of two things. Put over Dominic, give him a great rub by John Cena, or you crown John Cena in seemingly his second to last match as a Grand Slam champion. When we talked about the early stages of this retirement tour, I said one of two things was going to happen. Either John Cena was going to break the record and win number 17, or he was going to become a Grand Slam champion. I did not think that they would do both. I found that very hard to believe that they would do both. But here we are, knocking on the doorstep of the possibility of them doing both. He's already won the 17th World Championship at WrestleMania 41. All he needs is that IC Championship. Will he do it? Tune in for Survivor Series, because I think there's a good shot. that it could happen. Will the Savage says, I loved Spider-Man since I was 4, and ever since I had been introduced with Miles Morales, he has always been my favorite Spider-Man to current day because I love red and black color combo. It is a tremendous color combo. You can actually see here on my chair, black and red. Strong color. Me personally, I grew up on the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. So that and like the 90s animated series. And to me, Spider-Man has meant so much to my upbringing and who I have become as a young adult. He is a big proponent as to why I have the values that I do. Me growing up at that time, I'm so glad and fortunate that he left such an impression on me. But the Peter Parker, iteration of the character, he will always be Spider-Man to me. Love Miles. Don't get me wrong. Love Miles. It's great. A great addition to the Spider-Man family. But to me, Peter's always going to be number 1. Miles is a strong number 2, though. The black and red combo is great, but I'm a little partial to the red and blue. That's all. Dude B says, some say Triple H is jealous of Cena. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's for any of us to say. That is just speculation at this point. Triple H is like in one of the most powerful positions right now in pro wrestling as the head of creative of WWE. Hall of Famer multiple times. I don't know. I would hope not. Muhammad says, do you think Punk will stay healthy as champion? I do. I actually do. I think that CM Punk has learned this style of the WWE where he's able to sustain health. He hasn't been injured, knock on wood, since the big triceps tear at the Royal Rumble in 2024. I do anticipate that he will be healthy. I don't feel like they're going to overwork him. I feel like they've been very strategic with CM Punk and being very careful of his booking, as well as just his management and physically. So I don't think so. But that's just me being optimistic. Cena's on top. What else is left for him? Nothing. I mean, technically the IC Championship. But aside from that, John's a made man. People say Cena, bro, he has given us all. John Cena's a made man. But I think the IC Championship is a strong possibility. Do they need to do it? No. Not at all. They don't need to do it. If they do it, cool. But I don't want to sit up here and have people believe, he has to win the Intercontinental Championship. He doesn't have to. I'll tell you, I know for a fact, just based off of all of his interviews, It would not bother him if he never won that title. But also, I don't think it would mean, anything less if he did. Ultimately, he's going to do what creative directs him to do. Um, it's just going to suck to see him finally retire, man. In AEW, he was a mess. Yeah, no, but again, keep in mind he was still rusty. He came back from wrestling. What was it, 7 years prior? He hadn't been in the ring for a while. Ring shape, of course, after a while, your body's not really used to all of the contact. So that's what I would chalk it up to. Plus, just a couple of bad accidents, whether it was his foot jumping into the crowd. Imagine if McFarlane Toy Company makes a Cody Rhodes action figure, where Cody was in the CW Green Arrow TV show with Stephen Amell. That would be pretty cool. I was a big fan of the Green Arrow show, starring Stephen Amell, and Cody Rhodes would make an appearance there, here and there. That Arrowverse, man, there was a good time, between him and the Flash. I was really a big fan of those. Then it got to the point where I don't remember what season it was. It might have been 6 with the Flash. I kind of fell off, but the years of Arrow and the early Flash, I was a big fan of. Sam Fran says, Jose, every time I see Miles Morales, I think of Shamik Moore crashing out. Shout out to Shamik Moore. Honestly, though, with Haley Steinfeld, that's a valid crash out. That's valid. Shout out to Josh Allen. Number 1 for marrying Haley Steinfeld. But also, shout out to Josh Allen for beating the Chiefs this weekend. Sorry, Tyler, but you already know how I feel about Kansas City. Where was Jackie Redmond on Raw tonight? I don't know. She wasn't on. Didn't see her. They didn't really have any time for backstage interviews. I don't think they did any, now that I think about it. But I mean, hey, if she had an off day, good for her. Everyone deserves an off day. Lord knows I do. Not when it comes to this. I don't mean this. I mean, like, obviously, like my day job. I've said it before on stream. If I had the opportunity to do this full time, I would so do it. Hang out with you guys and just talk pro wrestling. Trying to produce a little bit more content on the channel. We're trying to branch out to YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. We're seeing a little bit of growth on TikTok, so that's great. Love seeing that as we continue to try to grow the J area, continue to grow the community that we have built here, not only as wrestling fans, but I think as friends, really. I look at you guys as my peers and just people who also enjoy this great form of entertainment. Cena doesn't botch that. Why? Well, Cena's a professional, man. And plus, he's still physically capable. You mentioned The Undertaker earlier. The Undertaker was well into his 50s. And he's like, physically, he could not keep up. John Cena, still physically fit. So I do think he wants to go out on top, meaning he doesn't want to wait until people are clamoring for him to retire. Look at what happened with Jericho. It got to the point people were chanting, please retire. Cena doesn't want to go that route. And good for him on realizing that, you know what, I'm going to call it when I'm ready and not when it's too late. Sanford asks, do you believe Gunther will be the one to retire Cena or Dominic? Listen, I would love it to be Dominic, but I'm going to go Gunther. I feel like Gunther is the right answer. It's the safe answer, but it's also just the correct answer. This guy, to beat John Cena, I mentioned it earlier in the stream, but you could easily go Rocky 4 and have John Cena versus Gunther, and it could be Rocky versus Ivan Drago. That would be such a badass feud between them. I mean, it wouldn't be a feud because it would just be a one-off, but that matchup between them, the visual of having like Cena standing across from Gunther, the size difference, the intimidation, and Cena never backing down, that's the way to do it. If you ask me, I'm going to tell you right now, call it. Gunther wins the tournament. And bookmark this. I might make it into a short. Gunther wins the tournament. He faces off against John Cena, Washington, D.C., Saturday night's main event. Back and forth, we have great action between John and Gunther. You don't know who's going to win. You want John Cena to win, but you think Gunther has it. And at one point, we're going to see John Cena lift Gunther into an attitude adjustment position, only for Gunther to counter that into the sleeper hold. He puts him in the sleeper hold, and John Cena, grasping for air, realizes that this might be it. He's seeing into the light, and he won't tap out. Why? Because John Cena lives by a mantra of 3 words, and that's never give up. John Cena, I think, will pass out to the sleeper hold to Gunther. He will not tap out. He will not get pinned. He will pass out in the middle of the ring by getting choked out by Gunther, and he will never give up. But in his final matchup, he will get choked out by Gunther. Bookmark it. I'm telling you right now. Sanford says, Gunther has the nose injury, right? I believe it was a nose injury and an orbital, if I'm not mistaken. I might have that, incorrect, but I thought it was a nose and orbital. Been a minute since I saw him. His last matchup was at SummerSlam against CM Punk. That was the last time we saw Gunther. And I think he's coming back around the corner. Will the Savage says, WWE has good figures from Mattel, but they would be better if they made figures from Hasbro, like Marvel Legends. You know what? Oh man, it's going to kill me. Was it Jakks Pacific? I don't remember. There was a whatever toy line that they had in the 2000s. I'm very partial to that. I'm not a big fan of nowadays where it's like they move for you. Like those rings where you can put them in a certain spot and they'll like bounce themselves off or they'll throw themselves off. I missed like when it was just us using our imagination as a kid. That was big for me. And to see how very complex the figures have gotten, I don't know. Collectible, cool. But if I'm a kid, I wouldn't be able to play with them. Sanford says Flex Force pass. I think it was like Jakks Pacific, or am I thinking the game? I don't know, dude. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like I said, to collect them would be cool, but to actually, as a kid, play with them, I couldn't. I'm more partial to the 2000s, but that's just me being nostalgic, if anything. Make sure you guys get in your questions and comments here as we begin to. Dukes was the game? No, I think you're thinking of Ukes. It was like with a Y, I think. Jakks, I believe, was the toys. So yeah, Jakks. That's what I'm pretty sure it was Jakks. Make sure you guys get your comments and questions in here as we begin to close out the stream. It's been a great hour talking pro wrestling with you. Got a new comment here. Parker says, do you like Hulk Hogan? I can respect and recognize what he did for the business. I will never discredit Hogan for what he did for WrestleMania, for what he did for the WWE. He was a big proponent as to the rock and wrestling era of professional wrestling. I think the way wrestling is nowadays is in large part due to the success of Hulkamania. Give him his credit. Take away the personal stuff. Because as a person, I have my own opinions about Terry Bollea. As Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, I was never a Hulk Hogan guy. I was never a fan of his style. During that era, I was much more of as if I was there, but watching it back, I became much more of a fan of like Roddy Piper and Randy Savage. Those were my guys. Big fan of those two, just because they were more athletic. The promo style was more entertaining to me. Again, not discrediting Hogan by no means. It just wasn't for me. I'm much more of a Randy Savage or a Roddy Piper fan. Thoughts on Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov versus the Killer Bees at WrestleMania 3, an infamous match that took place at WrestleMania 3. The Iron Sheik has gone on record about his feelings about Brian Blair and the Killer Bees. If you haven't seen those interviews, man, go out of your way and check it out. Anytime you have the Iron Sheik and a live microphone, that will definitely be entertaining. Sanford says, but for real though, Jose, if you had to pick one match between WrestleMania 21 opener or WrestleMania 10's opener, I think objectively WrestleMania 10's is better. Owen Hart versus Bret Hart is the better matchup, for sure. But from a bias standpoint, I grew up watching WrestleMania 21 on repeat. It was the first wrestling DVD I ever purchased. So I had Ray versus Eddie, WrestleMania 21. I had it on replay, on repeat. I can memorize that matchup to this day. So from a personal standpoint, WrestleMania 21. From an objective standpoint, the better match is Owen versus Brett, 100%. And I feel like it's a cop out between the two. If you to answer your question, which one do I prefer? Eddie versus Ray. I love Brett versus Owen, but Eddie versus Ray because of what it meant to me as a kid growing up and what it means to me now as a fan of lucha libre. Parker asked, "Do you like Ultimate Warrior?" Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against Ultimate Warrior, but again, to me, he falls in line with, Hulk Hogan. I I don't dislike Warrior, but he's not my first choice. I lean more towards Roddy Piper, Randy Savage, Mr. Perfect, Bret Hart. Those were my guys. May you please respond because I'm a figure poser, like having wrestlers fighting over wrestlers. Like I said, when it comes to the figures, I was much more of a fan of like being in more control and not having them do certain things for you. As we continue to close up the stream here, guys, it's been an eventful hour. Ooh, Parker, real quick, this says, do I like Bray Wyatt? I do like Bray Wyatt. I was always partial towards like the creative guys. So seeing like Bray Wyatt in the Woods or the Fiend, big fan of the Fiend stuff. I love the Fiend. I thought that was such a cool gimmick. I'm a big fan of horror, Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers, that kind of stuff. So when we saw the Fiend arrive, that to me was just a breath of fresh air. Certainly during that time in the WWE, and it's a shame that he's no longer with us and that he's gone so early. But Bray Wyatt, man, what we're seeing now with the Wyatt Six, I would love them to be more prominent, but it's a way of continuing his legacy in Bray Wyatt. Rest in peace to Bray. Sampran agrees. Says, I remembered the Wyatt family vignettes. Very eerie, man. Loved it. Loved the Charles Manson, cult like vibe that we got from those vignettes. Again, I'm very much into those, controversial type of storylines and pushing the envelope and this the eeriness that we got from that early Wyatt family, man. Great stuff. Luke Harper. I'm a fan of Brody Lee. Him as a member of the Wyatt family, I thought was very entertaining. But then once he went to AEW and became Mr. Brody Lee, I mean his dog collar matchup against Cody Rhodes, man, it's up there for AEW's list of matches. So yeah, I'm a fan. I like Rowan as well. Unfortunately, I will say I'm more biased towards Luke Harper and Bray Wyatt. Nothing but love for Rowan, but unfortunately, he will fall to third place if you had me to rank the three of them. So, but we'll go ahead and start closing up here, guys. I appreciate you guys joining me here on another live stream following Monday Night Raw, talking pro wrestling. We talked about Saturday night's main event, Gunther possibly being the final opponent for John Cena, as well as my thoughts on the U.S. title picture and how those open challenges have been great for pro wrestling. If you haven't already, make sure you like the stream, you comment down below some of your favorite parts of Saturday night's main event or Monday Night Raw. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all things pro wrestling. I appreciate you guys. I'm going to answer a couple more here because I see them just popping up. Will says, have a great night, and I'll talk to you on the next time Will's left the stream. Shawn Michaels reference. Shout out to Will there. I love a great Shawn Michaels reference. Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, has left the building. Thank you, Will. I appreciate you. Parker says, did Luke Harper die? Unfortunately, Brody Lee did pass away a few years back. I think it's almost been 5 years now since Brody Lee passed away. So, rest in peace to Brody Lee. On that note, I mean, that's such what a way to end it, though. But I want to thank you guys for joining us here on another live stream. Hope to see you guys next Monday as we go live following Monday Night Raw. And also, again, as I mentioned, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all the gimmicks that you already know as we continue to grow as a community, as we continue to grow the J area into a bigger and better brand for all of pro wrestling. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of Monday Night Raw as well as today's stream. I hope you guys have an awesome week ahead of you. Everyone, take care, stay safe, stay cool, And we'll see you in the next time for another edition of the J Area Wrestling Show.